Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another new episode here of About Skateboarding. Now, if you're new here, my name is Sean. I do daily episodes here that go on both Spotify, here on YouTube, as well as over on Apple Podcasts. And again, I just discussed, along with you guys in the comments below, I just like to discuss the whole entire arena and the world, the era of skateboarding, everything involved with it, and all the fun stuff that's involved with it. And today is no different. And again, before I get into this video's content, again, if you like this video or like any of the other videos that I put out, definitely give them a thumbs up and subscribe for more content that is put out every single day. And again, all the audio versions as well are over on, again, Spotify and over on Apple Podcasts for your listening pleasure as well. Now, today's video, we're going to be doing a fun kind of, not a breakdown, but it's kind of like what I feel like is an explanation of what it's like in a lot of cases to get your first professional skateboard. And all that I mean by that is that it's usually a skateboard that it comes from one of the, like, either a professional pro rider, like a signature rider collection, like a release like that, or it can be a signature skateboard deck from a company like, Birdhouse or Baker or whatever it might be, just any of those kind of brands. There's a million of them out there, but those are a few of my favorite. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of cover today, just like a brief example of what the experience is a little bit like, and where I feel like you should go, even in the age of 2025, where everything's online, for your first one, and how I don't think that it should be your first board, honestly. And we'll kind of go into that now, pretty much for the most part. So again, my first few skateboards were not, like, for the record of it, were not professional boards, because again, I was about, I started skateboarding when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I did not consider it anything besides a hobby, which it only stayed a hobby overall. But I got more serious about it and more aggressive and passionate about it as a hobby as I got older, and I used it as a main form of transportation around my little suburb city that I lived in at the time as well. And so, again, I didn't get like a professional one for quite a few years, honestly. I ended up just buying like at the time when I was a kid, just like a wooden cheap Target one, or even Walmart. I can't remember where it was from actually, but just like a cheap wooden one that worked okay. Like, it was okay. It was a very, very heavy one, so it wasn't like anything professional at all, as far as like professionally made by a company with all the parts and that kind of thing. Nothing like that. But it did the trick. It did it did the job for what it needed to be done, as far as, like, just being rideable and taking care of me overall, as far as, like, not, I can roll over like rocks and be okay. Like, some boards can't do that, to be honest, which is kind of scary and sad. But just one of those things where, like, it did the job for what it was for a couple of years until I rode it like kind of out of commission. And I think it ended up breaking on a rail, was from when I was trying to board slide one day, is how I actually broke the thing when I first got it. But yeah, it was just a generic Target brand or Walmart brand board. And there's even ones that are even like more entry level than that. That are like plastic boards, which are kind of where skateboarding really started. Back in the day, where like the Alva skateboards, I think I believe they were plastic in the beginning. Or I think that they were, like, when it was the beginning of everything, even with like polyurethane wheels and that kind of thing, for like the beginning of the whole skateboard, of how they were made, because they were based off of surfboards for surfing to skateboarding. So fun stuff there. So again, that's kind of what I started off with. And then I remember distinctly, because for me, my first professional, but I believe I got when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So I wasn't like that much older than, when I first started. But I feel like my mom could tell that I showed enough interest consistently in the sport of skateboarding for a long enough period of time, to where she was like, hey, if it was my birthday coming up, she's like, hey, what do you want? And I usually got one big gift for every year for my birthday overall. So I got a skateboard one year. And actually at the time, I had a very deep obsession with Tony Hawk, as I still do, as far as, like, he's like one of my heroes of my entire lifetime, just from him being what I would say, and as many others would probably say, as the godfather of skateboarding, as far as, like, just overall leadership, and how he kind of has for sure transformed the sport from where he started to where he is now, and how it just, really became a huge sport, not due to him only, but because of how much he pushed his own aggressiveness of passion with it. And of course there's all the video games and all that stuff too, but just like his brands like Birdhouse and Audio and all those things that he developed over time when he was younger, and how they still exist today, and how again, he's a huge role model for a lot of people, including myself, still to this day, just in how he handles himself and how he still skates and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, again, but my first board was actually a Tony Hawk skateboard. Now, I will say this much: I back then did not know I was like 7 or 8 years old. So back then I did not know the difference. I was never explained or taught the different sizes of what they were appropriate for a skateboard deck. And all that I mean by that, if you don't know what that is, which again, if you're new to skateboarding, that's all good. But basically, the size of the width of the deck is important because it depends on what kind of skateboarding you're trying to do. And back then, there wasn't as much of a difference between all of them as there is now, because now you can pretty much get almost whatever skateboard deck for the most part, unless it's a pro rider skateboard deck. Like if you buy like a street skater deck that's a pro model, it'll be made for street skating. So obviously, but back then that didn't really exist yet. And so Tony Hawk, for me at least, he was my role model back then for skateboarding before I got more heavily into street skating and park skating stuff, things like that. And so his actually, I believe, or the one that I first got when I can't remember the design it was or anything like that, but it was one of the Tony Hawk Bones, not Bones for Grade, but like Tony Hawk Bones skateboards like that from his company, from Birdhouse. And I do remember that the actual skateboard, the width was an 8-inch for the width for that part. So like all that means is that's the width of the skateboard, and where that comes in handy for skateboarding, if you're unaware of it, is the difference between, again, on what you're riding on. So if you're riding street terrain, like in a park, like a skate park or on the street, you typically, not everyone, but typically will want to get a more narrow skateboard sometimes. And if you're doing vert or more transitional stuff, then you go for a wider skateboard. Now, I'm going to preface everything I just said with the fact that it all really depends on your height, your weight, your build even, and what kind of skateboarding you want to do overall. And to get all that done as a first-time buyer, I would say, because nowadays it is very, very easy to buy skateboards, complete skateboards, even online. And I don't recommend doing that at all if it's your first skateboard at all. And I don't recommend buying what anyone else uses either. Like even if unless they are in an area of skateboarding that you admire and you want to go into, then that's obviously, totally fine. But I would not recommend like going to do what I did, which is to buy a Tony Hawk skateboard or an Andrew Reynolds skateboard or a Nigel Houston skateboard, size wise, if you're not planning or intending to do that type of skating, because all it's gonna do for you as a skater is make your skating harder to do for what you're trying to intend to do. So what I mean by that, if it's not obvious, is if you're trying to do like a lot of transitional stuff or ride vert and you buy a Nigel Houston skateboard deck, then it's going to be, a little bit awkward because he's a hardcore street skater for the most part. So his decks are more narrow. They're on more, I believe it's like a 7.75 inch for his skateboards, or even narrower than that, like 7.5. So if you buy that narrow of a deck and you go skateboarding on a vert ramp, it's going to be probably, I'm not sure, guaranteeing, but it's going to be probably hard to balance out on the deck, and then all that goes into that too. So for my recommendation, take it for what you will, because I'm not a professional skater in any way. I'm not sponsored. I just think it's information I think is useful for anyone that's new to it, and for a first time buyer for sure, because I made that mistake on my first board overall. So again, when it's your first skateboard, don't buy it online. There's so many local skate shops in every single state that you can just look up online and go support them, for one thing, because they don't make money like a ton of it off of like the bigger companies like CCS or Active Ride Shop or any of those bigger companies. They don't make enough, or they don't make as much money as those bigger ones do. So if you have a local skate shop in your area, go support them. That's what they're there for. Like for me in Minnesota here where I live, it's Third Layer Skate Shop for the most part. There's a few other smaller ones too, but for the most part, Third Layer has like the most in my area for what they are, as far as like, just being, they have a skate park too, but they also have a really cool pro ride shop is what it's called for the most part. So I definitely recommend to go in person and look around, like shop around. And again, I do not recommend under any circumstances, I mean, you can do what you want obviously, but I don't recommend, make sure that you intentionally buy a board for what skateboarding style you want to do. Now, if you are trying to do many styles, then you might need to get multiple decks. You can sometimes get like a medium deck like a middle ground deck between the two for sizing of the size of it, and kind of get the best of all the worlds essentially. And that's kind of what I did too. But if you are for sure like hardcore street skating or hardcore like any like either or like that, then definitely get the sizing that's meant for that. Now, that also only goes so far in the world of skateboarding, at least in my opinion, because of the fact that when you do that, if you, because again, you need to go in there because also it will be partially based off of, again, your height, your weight, your foot size too. So some people can only buy a certain type of skateboard deck because of the like size wise, because they have much bigger feet, so they need to have a bigger, wider deck to accommodate for their bigger feet. So that all comes into play too. So that's why I'm like, you can't do that online. You can't really. I mean, some of them, I will say that some of the websites that are pretty, efficient for like coding and how they function, that kind of thing. Some websites do operate pretty well where they will have you enter in all the information of those things like height, weight, what kind of skateboarding you do, and then it will give you, based on your interest of skating style, what kind of skateboard deck is best for you, based on what they have, and that's okay. But I still feel like the whole entire point of it is to, again, support your local skate shop wherever that may be, and go in person and try it out, and just because most of them don't have like inventory online to see. You have to go there in person and see what they have. And that's also a whole fun experience too, especially if it's your first time buying a professional skateboard deck. Like, it's really cool for that. Now, as far as everything else goes for the complete skateboard, which is what it's called, and all that complete means for a skateboard is that you're buying the entire package of a skateboard. So that means the deck, the grip tape, which usually comes with the deck anyways for the price, the trucks, the bearings, the wheels, all that kind of stuff. Now, all of that is also very, very, very conditional on what you're doing too, and everything can be, of course, bought as a base model version. So if you're doing if you're an entry level skater that's just learning to do the basic stuff of just riding around or learn how to ollie, learning how to do basic tricks and things like that, then just do the basic package that most places offer, and don't let them upsell you, because they might try to do that, because some places are commission based and whatever, all that kind of fun stuff. But just get a basic package, because you can easily make a decent skateboard go from being like around $100 for a professional one, like with a graphic on the bottom, not a blank deck, to being over almost $200 these days, because of how many upgrades there are and how crazy the bearings can be inside the wheels, and just how, because they get really it's almost like an Apple product these days, where you can like buy like an iPhone or even like a MacBook Pro and like get a base model and then scale it way up like an extra $2,000, because it's just RAM and and memory and all that kind of crazy stuff. So if you're just starting out, don't do that. I recommend highly against that, because you don't need that yet. Again, if you're just learning how to skate for the basics, and you're even, and especially if you're just going or transitioning from a Target board or a Walmart board, or even like a hand-me-down board into a professional board as a brand new one for your first one ever, I do not recommend upgrading anything unless you know for a fact, unless you think you're fully committed to one style of skateboarding, because that's where the customizations for the most part come into play. So for me, back in the day when I got my first one, again, I got a Tony Hawk skateboard because he was my role model, and I knew he skated vert for the most part, but I didn't know, I was never taught or explained the sizing differences between because I mostly skated street and I skated skate parks, and the board worked okay for that. But when I got the board, I went to the actual skate park I went to use it. That's when I ran into the tough time that I'm trying to get into now for explaining to you guys, because it became a thing where I basically had a much harder time due to how wide the board was, how wide it was, because it was a vert board on street transition skating. So like heel flips, kick flips, always they were all a little bit harder to flip on that skateboard because of how wide the skateboard was. And it's funny though, because like the next board after that I got, because I don't want to say I'm obsessed, but I became very into Andrew Reynolds for skateboarding, as far as because he had a video part with Tony Hawk on one of their videos as well, and I loved his skateboarding style as well. So my next board after my Tony Hawk one was actually an Andrew Reynolds Birdhouse skateboard before he started the whole Baker company, and that was where I got more. I won't say I got better at skateboarding, but it was definitely a much better fit for my style of skateboarding, because it was a lot more narrow of a skateboard than what the Tony Hawk one was. So again, that's just my advice for that, is to make sure that you get a skateboard the deck at least that really suits you and your sizing and your weight and all that kind of stuff. And then and even this, I would say I don't even say this much because some people, like I know some people at like a college down in Minneapolis near where I live, like they don't even buy the normal like nose tail mid area of a skateboard. Like those like the trick ones, they will buy like a longboard or whatever, and they're a lot cheaper too. So if you don't even like, if you're not even planning on doing tricks, and if you just want a better board than a Target or Walmart board that will just get you around town and that's a smoother ride, then just get a longboard. They're usually way cheaper than a professional skateboard is, and they're honestly much more, typically a much more smoother ride because they're made for lounging around on. They're not made for tricks at all. They won't have a nails or sorry, they won't have a nose on them. They'll probably have a tail though for the most part, but they're just made to just relax and ride around town on. Those are good for that too. So if you're a skateboarder or if you're just a rider and you just want to ride around town and not be doing tricks off of everything, then you can just get a longboard. It's almost just, it's what might be better for you for that too. So, and again, price wise, they're going to be all over the place. So on average, I would say like from my life experience of when I first got my first one to now, which was a couple years ago now, I would say the average professional skateboard, like complete with a base package, should not cost you really more than $100 to $150 for all the basic stuff. And that includes the whole thing. So trucks, wheels, all the hardware for the screws or Allen wrench stuff if you want to go that way with it as well. And usually the grip tape, which can also be upgraded too. The grip tape also comes on the deck if you buy a deck as well. For most places as well, they'll put it on for you even too. So again, if you go through all that, usually it's about $100 to $150. It might be more right now because of tariffs and all that. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't looked at a skateboard for pricing in a while for the whole tariff situation, but that's the average pricing for them. So it's just the average pricing. But again, if you're just starting out and you're still unsure about what you want to do for skateboarding style, get the basic package. Now, if you are on the opposite side where where you are for sure wanting to get a complete skateboard in this case, where you know that you're going to go to you're going to go transition into like a hardcore street style skater, then that's where you can definitely look into upgrading every part of your skateboard as far as like having much grippier grip tape, much faster bearings in your wheels, better wheels for that kind of grip of a street, of just like street like cement and gravel, that kind of stuff like that. And because there's luckily there's skateboard parts for every type of skating these days. And it will cost you quite a bit more money. So like for example, like my last professional skateboard that I bought a couple years ago now, which was a Baker skateboard. It was just a generic team deck. So that's all I was fine with that. That one cost me because of all the upgrades I did to it for the street part of it. Because that's why when I skateboard, I skate street for the most part. So it was about $180 for that, just because I upgraded everything for the bearings, the grip tape, all the trucks, all that stuff. So that was just how I wanted to do it. So again, it's all very, very personalized in how you are and how you want to skate and what you're skating to. So that's kind of my thoughts overall about your first professional skateboard. Now I will make some videos down the road about just hardware and more detailed things like that if you'd like those kind of videos as far as like what I recommend at all, just getting, again, as a more of a street skater for that kind of thing, then let me know in the comments below. And let me know what you have. Like if you let me know if you already if you've been skating for a long time like I have. Let me know in the comments below what your first professional board was, and maybe if you switch styles, let me know what you went into and what your favorite skateboard brand is these days, because there's been so many brands over the years that have gone in and out of style and kind of faded out, all the kind of usual stuff. So I'd love to know that as well. Otherwise, again, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you like what you see, then definitely subscribe for more content. And again, these are all audio-wise over on, again, Apple Podcasts and over on Spotify. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you guys all in the next video and episode.